What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Other Side of the Firewall podcast, where we talk about the latest and greatest cybersecurity news, as well as we highlight those movers and shakers and glass ceiling breakers, those people of color who made it to the other side of the proverbial firewall. My name is Ryan Williams, and this week I have special guest, Chris Abacon.
How are you guys doing? Glad to be back.
What's going on? He's back, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
So Chris is local as well, so one of these days we're going to get in the same room. But I got to figure out how that's going to work. I got to get a mic for that, right?
Right.
But definitely continue to tune in throughout the week. So Shannon's on a much needed vacation. So it's me and Chris all week. So Monday, Tuesday are topics, Wednesday's discussion. And then Thursday will probably be a throwback, just like we've been doing for the past couple of weeks, where I take an older episode and I like to highlight it because that's either something to do with current times or it's just it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And then Fridays, everything else. So movies, books, games, all that good stuff. So definitely tune in to hear Chris's hot takes on whatever he's been consuming all week. But with that being said, I'll jump right into our first topic. So Chris Jones wrote in with the current one. So the NSA and CISA, red and blue teams share top 10 cybersecurity misconfigurations. So the executive summary, right? I'll just read it real quick. So the National Security Agency and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency are releasing this joint cybersecurity advisory, or CSA, to highlight the most common cybersecurity misconfigurations, there we go, in large organizations, and detail the tactics, techniques, and procedures, or TTPs, actors use to exploit these misconfigurations. So with that being said, I'd like to go through the top 10 with Chris, and then we can kind of talk over our experience with it or what we think about their priorities and their top 10 list, right? Mm-hmm. What you got, Chris?
Right. So the first misconfiguration is default configurations of software and applications, right? With that said, it's the default configurations leave a lot of vulnerability because a lot of companies won't tailor their specific needs or security requirements to those software applications, right? So let's see, what's one big example? Certain protocols or ports may be turned on in software-defined networks, or people are going with let's see, I just noticed it at the rate for access control list, but things like that are left wide open, right? So something may not be tailored to specific organizations, and this would leave them vulnerable to attack. And the second misconfiguration is improper separation of user and administrative privilege. So that's actually something very common that we've seen throughout the highest levels of like government, right? Because administrators tend to get they want to be in control, right? Like, I mean, I was a system administrator for a long time. I just wanted to have the rights, and two, I wanted to be able to do my regular day-to-day job as well. Any browsing or the research I might have to do for some of my projects. That said, something simple as, hey, if you're on a administrative account on Windows, you shouldn't be able to browse the internet, carte blanche, versus on a user. I mean, not carte blanche, but that with the same rights that a user would have.
Right. There should be some guardrails there.
Exactly. So I remember when I first signed into an organization that was doing their job right. I was like, oh crap, I can't access my Outlook email. What's going on here? Or I can't access Gmail from my administrative account, right? But those types of configurations are important for something called data exfiltration, right? Like specifically when you're dealing with access control lists or specific configurations on Windows, you want to be able to segment and segregate those functions when you're a user. So you got any more experience with that, Ryan?
Yeah, definitely. So when I worked as network engineer and admin, same thing. Like at the time, the Air Force was trying to separate every single part of the infrastructure, right? You would have, I believe at the time they called it IMS, right? Which would just be your network admin and engineering network. So you had no access to your normal unclassified or secret networks. They're all enclaves onto themselves. But with that came real estate, right? So I had to go from 2 PCs to 3 PCs to eventually 4 PCs because I had to
Right.
have an admin PC for every network that I was in control of. So you got to think about power, you got to think about dense real estate, and things of that nature, right? So it can be kind of costly, but the simple solution is just to separate those things logically. Where, like you said, you can't access the worldwide internet. You can't access your Gmail or your Google Drive or things of that nature, and that pretty much allows the good separation between your admin and the rest of the world. So people can't jump in, potentially either pilfer credentials or escalate their privileges from the things they stole. Um, with number three, the insufficient internal network monitoring, you would think that'd be a no-brainer, right? But again, these solutions, like you'll have companies that will have all the tools, right? They'll be top of the line. They'll have all of the things, but it doesn't feed into a SIM, right? So you have 8 different tools that are giving you all these different alarms and flags, and it's just. But at the same time, you have to log into all these different things to track them. You have to track all the emails. It can be analysis paralysis.
Right.
So the best thing for you to do is to have all this stuff feed into a sim of some sort that can give you some kind of actionable, digestible information. In the future, I'm sure we'll see a bunch of AI add-ons and tools that will feed into that as well. But
Right.
we're almost there, right? With Copilot, I think um, Microsoft has a lot of solutions that they're working on. So they have Copilot, they have I think Sentinel's getting some kind of plugin or something like that. And then there's a bunch of other companies that we saw when we were walking around Huntsville during the Cybersecurity Summit, where everybody has their own flavor of this is what AI is going to do for your security.
Right. It kind of segment or kind of piggyback off that. Um, I think SIM solutions, right? All those solutions to monitor your networks, I think they're very cost prohibitive as well for many
Yes.
organizations. They don't see that as a that they don't see that as a necessary expense because they're focused on the bottom line. They're focused on how can we be profitable as a business. And things like security, unfortunately, are an afterthought. Might
Right.
have cut off there.
Um, and that's the unfortunate part of it, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
like we're still we're still on the treadmill, like where
Mhm.
it's like security after the fact, security after the fact. Not kind of thinking like this is a necessary expense. This is like utility bill, basically. Like you need power, you need internet, you need water, you need cybersecurity. And it's not to hype it up too much, right? Because obviously that's our own bias, and we're in the industry doing such.
Right.
However, you have your MGMs, you have your Caesars, you have your Colonial Pipelines, you have your JBS meat packing plants. Like you have all these big entities being struck down cybersecurity wise, paying hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on the back end when they could have just paid smaller amounts of money to get the ball rolling initially.
Right. And then next on the list, we've got lack of network segmentation. So that's more along the lines of having your, so you can have a company on having VLANs in place, right? So for those that don't know, it's a virtual LAN. So people can
Yeah,
actually segment network traffic based on really how an organization wants to define it. So in terms of department or even something as simple as you can have your data and voice VLANs, right? So for voice or just internet access. And then again, things like network segmentation are definitely an afterthought until a company grows to the point where they need that level of segmentation. If you have a large organization and they don't have network segmentation, right, that's a big no-no, right? Because especially when you're geographically spread out throughout the states or even internationally. And then in addition to that, it's the hybrid work environment. Now that we've got it won't have VPNs and things like that installed, and they're just working off, Google or standard, cloud offerings that are open source, which are definitely less secure than a centrally managed provider, some type of VPN using Zscaler, things like that, through an organization. And then next we got poor patch management.
right,
So that one's definitely definitely a topic, because a lot of attacks, right? When you don't have patch management, when even when you, let's say you have a a large amount of assets, and even a few of those assets within your organization aren't patched, that leaves just that many more attack vectors that a threat, or somebody even just wanting to be malicious can have on the environment, right? So poor patch management is definitely it's an entire process, right? There,
Right.
this is coming up with you got to have all these change management processes and configuration control boards, things of that nature. I understand why that can be prohibitive in terms of if there's a lot, if administrators feel like they're handicapped per se, but there needs to be a process in place, and it is very expensive and costly.
Right. And you have to have somebody who's interested in the process.
Mhm.
I think is a big one to attach to it, because you need to be kind of plugged in to the latest news. Like, yeah, so like right here at the other side of the Firewall podcast, right?
That's
We
right.
talk about 0 days all
Exactly.
the time. But you need someone who finds it interesting, who is on those forums, who sees the 0 days, and then can work it into your patch management process, right? They also need to be able to speak both to the people above them, to the C-suite, or at least the person interfacing with the C-suite, as well as with their peers, right? Because you have a lot of people who are very technical, but they speak very technical, and they're unable to uh, kind of justify or explain it to somebody who really cares about the bottom line, right? Like, that's cool and all, but what does a 0 day have to do with us? And then you can break it down and then make sure you're putting the right foot forward in your patch management cycle, as well as the money that's involved in doing so. With that being said, the next is bypass of security, or I'm sorry, bypass of system access controls. So the way I interpret this one, and I can actually click it. So if you go to the link that will be in the description, it'll actually send you to the CISA, the document that we're talking about, and it has links to kind of break down what each one means. So in this case, bypass of system access controls is a malicious actor can bypass system access controls by compromising alternate authentication methods in an environment. If a malicious actor can collect hashes in a network, they can use the hashes to authenticate using non-standard means, such as pass the hash or PH. So basically, it's the mimicking of accounts, right? So with that, you have to have a pretty good system in place to first stop man-in-the-middle attacks. So whatever your IPS, IDS, whatever that is, both host-based or within your network, as well as a FIM, right? So like a file integrity management or manager is basically just that. Like, it sniffs out the hashes to make sure that they still are the same once they land wherever they're going, right? So it makes sure that the integrity of the file has not changed. So that should be a solution that you're either looking into getting or you already have.
Mhm.
What is next? Because I messed up the document because I jumped.
Yeah. So next up on the list, we've gotten weak or misconfigured multi-factor authentication methods. So within the reading, it says some networks require accounts that use smart cards or tokens. Multi-factor requirements can be misconfigured so that the password hashes for accounts never change. Really, in this case, you want to have strong multi-factor authentication methods, specifically ones that don't use phone numbers, right? Because SMS text is unencrypted, right? So we're looking at wanting to use, soft multi-factor authentication methods like Google Authenticator, which have a one-time password, right? So things like that. But within the DoD itself, right, we've got our something you have and something being your CAC card, right, or your CAC, which is a token, and then something which would be the PIN number, right? So that's
Right.
two-factor authentications. In this case, this seems to be more of a ingrained issue, because if they're misconfigured so that hashes never change, that's definitely a problem, because when those hashes are stored in some type of repository, usually in an etc/shadow file within Linux or wherever it might be, right? If a malicious actor can get into that file and if they do not change their hashes, because remember, a lot of the times, uh, data filtration, they can get data that's months old, right? And if they
Right.
never change, they'll have continuous access. They'll access to your accounts and things of that nature.
Right. And we kind of have to land a plane on this one, but I thought this was a really good conversation. The
Yeah,
last three being insufficient access control lists, so ACLs on network shares and services. Number nine being poor credential hygiene, which we could talk about to infinity. And then number 10 being unrestricted code execution. So it's talking about you devs, the people who want all the keys to the kingdom all the time.
right.
But definitely continue to tune in throughout the week. So Monday, Tuesday are topics, Wednesday discussion, and then Fridays are everything else. Abacon will be here all week. Please look him up on LinkedIn, which the link will be provided. Hit us up at all the sites that go by our name. Stay safe, stay secure.